When we're creating something, a painting, a sculpture, it's never just one mark. It's never just one gesture. It's never one hack or some secret we suddenly learn, although sometimes those moments, they do appear. But most often it's something else. It's the space where all of that lands. It's a constant returning, a shaping, a refining, a polishing of the stone. We come back again and again. And slowly the shape, it begins to reveal itself. In many ways, these last 28 days have felt like that to me. No surprise, really. Lived experience, experiential wisdom is very much a thing available to all of us. These 28 days have not been a performance at all. It's been more like a process of returning, of listening, ear to the rail of what I'll call the great heartbeat. Have you ever tried to listen to your own heartbeat? It's the rhythm of your body, the to and fro that carries your thoughts, your emotions, your sensations, and yet it can be remarkably difficult to hear the steady pitter-pat of that one beating heart that keeps everything going that we commonly know about being alive. If you sit long enough, if you listen closely enough, it will slowly reveal itself. Conscious awareness can be like that. Today's day 28. 28 days ago, here on YouTube, I began sharing reflections about some of the most difficult terrain humans can walk through. Trauma, grief, loss, estrangement, betrayal, all the emotional landscapes that arise from those experiences, loneliness, heartbreak, disbelief, bewilderment, anger, despair, anxiety, fear. I wanted to create a space where people navigating those territories might feel, even for a moment, that they weren't alone. And in that space of safety and refuge, something else might have an opportunity to appear. I wanted to show how presence exists for me, and by extension, how it might exist for you, beyond the rapidity of quick fixes. You know the ones I'm talking about, the ones we struggle to implement, the ones we struggle to stay with. All of this is beyond scholarly influence that isn't always connected to lived experience. At the beginning of these 28 days, I wondered what I could talk about each day. Thank goodness I'm loquacious by nature, but really beyond that, what drove my commitment to show up for these 28 days was something quite a lot deeper. A deep knowing of what helped me when I found myself in such a desolate, desecrated landscape. What worked for me and my desire to share that with you. When I committed to showing up inside a container like this, even though I had fear, even though I didn't know how it would go, even though some people who had followed me before may have stepped away, well, I did it anyway, because it was so aligned with living a life of meaning and purpose, a life guided by my values. At that point, I could not walk away from that. And the ability to make that decision came from first landing in conscious awareness. From there, the deeper layers began to come forward. What mattered became more clearly articulated as the days progressed. The voice of this teaching as it relates to trauma, grief, loss, betrayal, estrangement, and really life itself. That voice became clearer, more precise. And what became realer over those 28 days is something I've been pointing to again and again, conscious awareness. Because what I've learned over many years, and most especially over the last 5 years, navigating some very intense life experiences, is that when we learn to rest back into conscious awareness, something quite remarkable happens. Capacity returns, or perhaps appears for the first time. And when capacity is present, choice points are not far behind. When we're in the middle of heartbreak or trauma or despair, it can feel as though there are no choice points available at all. And I want to remind you that you're not failing as a human being when you can't catch your next breath in those moments. It's entirely normal. It's the natural consequence of following the dictates of our thinking mind and the emotions that arise from our thinking mind. But when we discover awareness sitting there, even slightly, space appears. And in that space, things begin to move. That's really been the heartbeat of these reflections over these 28 days. Not quick fixes, not dopamine hits, not pretending that life does not contain very real pain, not pretending that things have not happened that feel unjust or unfair, things you never could have controlled. Not ever. Now, while all of this may sound relatively straightforward, you may even be rolling your eyes thinking, well, Lyndon Morris Del Rio, I already meditate. I know about presence. And you do. But I'd suggest that there are layers here, subtle layers, nuances, differences between content and context, between what the mind is producing, content, and the field in which all of that's appearing, context. It's very easy for us to become tripped up by our thinking minds. Again and again. One of the things this 28-day container also taught me is the power of containers themselves. And a container gives me room to stretch my legs for a defined period of time. I have a little sports car that almost never gets out on the freeway anymore. That's what it was built for. Stretching its legs. And so it is with this beautiful life we have. And with conscious awareness. The human mind, with all of its emotions, memories, and sensations, it's not the enemy. It's actually part of the design. It's built so that we can move closer to and discover the wider field of conscious awareness. For me, these 28 days became a place to explore and deepen into the things that matter most to me, and to share pieces of my lived experience in a way that hopefully offers support and companionship for anyone walking through difficult terrain. People sometimes talk about challenges like this as being hard, and in a certain sense, this container did require something of the hard. It required presence. It required continuity, showing up even on days when I was tired or when I was balancing the other things that matter deeply in my life, like art, music, writing, health, movement, friendships, and the ongoing navigation of healing, of course. There were moments of perfectionism, moments where I wondered if I was transmitting exactly what I was wanting to share. But interestingly, it never really felt hard in the way people often imagine that word. And I think that's because my life is now rooted in conscious awareness. If I ever lose the thread, which I sometimes do, if I ever feel overwhelmed, which can happen, there's always a ground I return to, always awareness itself. I could even go so far as to say that my awareness of conscious awareness has revealed itself as something woven into my DNA. It's always been there. Always. When I was born with black hair. Not brown hair, not dark brown hair. Black hair. Fair skin, blue eyes, black hair. I stayed that way until my early 40s. And then I started dyeing my hair. Red, strawberry blonde, blonde, a touch of mauve. Now there's quite a bit of gray. My hairdresser and I continue to play with all of it. You might have difficulty imagining me with black hair, but it's still there in my DNA. And remember, we're not only talking about hair color here. What about the bigger things? So when we come back to this place of conscious awareness, something we cannot always see, something we may not have a clear trailhead to find through our thinking mind or emotional memory, that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. In fact, it exists more reliably than almost anything else I could point to. For the searching, for the finding, and for the returning again and again. There's a quote by a famous writer about returning to the place where we first began and knowing it for the first time. That applies here. From conscious awareness, capacity emerges. And when capacity's here, the next step becomes visible. With clarity comes choice points. What I can say after these 28 days is that something in me has stepped more fully forward, not the smaller self we often identify with, the one that's all tangled in thoughts, narratives, and emotional storms, but the deeper place, the place that knows how to rest back into awareness itself. And from that place, something very simple becomes possible. We continue. Practically, pragmatically, full of promise in this one very precious human life we have. Before closing today, I want to thank you, truly. Every time you watched one of these reflections, every time you listened to a story, every time you sat with an idea, you're bringing your own presence into this space. It matters because none of us are actually walking this terrain alone. So as we close this 28-day container, I'll leave you with an invitation just for a moment. See what happens if you allow yourself to rest back into the awareness that's already here. Not thinking about it, not analyzing it, just noticing the space that holds everything. Allowing your thoughts and feelings to rest there. And as that happens, capacity reveals itself. Notice it. Perhaps it's not showing up instantly, but it's coming. I can guarantee you that. Choice points begin to appear like 10,001 twinkling stars in the vast revolving night sky, offering wonder, offering hope, and promise of the kind that's firmly etched into the eternity of your being. And so we continue. Thank you for walking through these 28 days with me. I hope you'll stay. I'll talk to you soon.